So if you've been keeping up with my channel recently, then you'll know that there's been a lot of change and a lot of transition towards space content, with Out of This World finally starting to get some serious traction. As a result, because I've been really busy at work, and including a business trip I'm doing next week which is international, and also because I moved house last week, I haven't really had much time for GD. Now obviously, I'll endeavour to continue G News when I can, and I know you've all been waiting very patiently for my 80k sub special, and I've now passed 90k, but largely I just have less and less time for GD related stuff, whereas earlier this year I was able to pour all my time into it. Regardless, this is a new, well, kind of series, and just a fun set of videos that I want to make, where I basically recap the best of GD over the past few updates with set themes each time. I know this looks like a top 10 or top list, and to be fair it kind of is, but instead of going for something clear cut like difficulty to rank them by, I'm going to be ranking these entities based on the number of qualitative factors, so that's what this new video series is. If you have any suggestions for episode ideas, drop them in the comments and I'll hopefully be able to continue this soon. And what better way to start the series with everyone's favourite demon classification, Red Hell themed extreme demons. Over the past few years we've had a lot of these, and they've had a very polarised reception in the community. I thought, for this very reason that it mixes nostalgia and controversy, that it would be a good place to start. I'll be assessing them based primarily on design, but also taking into account things like gameplay. For example, if it was just blatantly difficult to divert from design, and other things like repetitiveness and tidiness. Just be aware that, although I'm going to try and remove my personal out-and-out bias, this is going to be overwhelmingly based on my opinion, which you might not agree with. So, please consider that when you decide to randomly hate on the video because you didn't agree. At the end of this absolute essay, let's get going. Starting this list off is Red World Rebirth. Red World Rebirth is a level that I would like to put higher on this list, but I just cannot justify given its repetitiveness. Now, this isn't the fault of the creators. It's still a good level, but they were kind of in a difficult position given the original level they were building from isn't all that exciting. When Red World was released in 1.8, it was extremely unique and stood out because it implemented a swing copter for one of the first instances of it being used. But in the modern day community, where it's actually more common to have a swing copter than not to have one, this level falls flat for me. I really like the design in some parts, but the aforementioned gameplay brings the level down a lot. After all, what is this level apart from just swing copters and straight flying? As Red levels go, it's pretty unboastful and modest, which is something I appreciate in them, but I definitely think this kind of block design and style would have been better applied to a level with original gameplay, where the creators could have used half-decent transitions, flying parts and cube parts. That is the inevitable challenge you face when rebuilding an old level, and unfortunately causes Red World Rebirth to fall down in that respect. So overall, I give the level a 5 out of 10. And also, by the way, I'm going to be rating them out of 10. Next on this list is a level that is set to become the hardest new demon in the game, Kenos. It's been almost 2 years in the works, and it's now finally getting somewhere. But no matter what it stands to be, it doesn't escape from the fact that this level is just painfully average. Hell in 1.9 was actually a pretty well crafted level for an impossible level, but it was started in 2.0, and nowadays it hardly looks that different to its prequel. It's also worth noting that this came about in a very similar fashion, in that it was an extension to the prequel level. Bloodlust, however, ended up having quite different gameplay. Kenos, even in its extension, ended up being incredibly repetitive. All it is just wave, mini-wave, cube and ship with no variety in each of the sections. And I'm being pretty harsh to this level here, but nothing in this level really jumps out at me. 80 to 86% is the only even remotely good interesting part in my opinion. And once again, it's one of these levels that relies on difficulty to be interesting. A good analogy for a lot of these extreme demons is a woman with no personality but good looks. All she does is rides off her good looks with zero depth to her. And then you're in a night in the club that is the Geometry Dash community, and all of these women end up looking the same. Dull and uninteresting. I know this is a little bit of a weird comparison, but please tell me I'm wrong. Overall, Kenos also gets a 5 out of 10 for me. Appropriate considering this level really does seem to deal in half measures. Next up on this list is Crimson Planet. Not a bad level, but rather shafted itself in the time that it was released. Basically, by mid 2.1, the climate for Red Extreme Demons was much less open and welcoming, which I can sort of understand, given how many we've had over the years. Another problem for it, which initially seemed like a good idea but ended up working against it, was the difficulty. Wuxi took this level up in difficulty so far to the point that it rivals Bloodlust, but in doing that, he kind of came across as forcing the difficulty. Instead, I think the difficulty made this less rate-worthy, and hence it was forgotten about almost immediately. The level itself is pretty decent, you have some nicely designed and well-made parts, but generally there's nothing aside from the difficulty that really makes this level stand out. As a result, it doesn't really have a lot to offer the community, especially in its unrated state, which just equates to a lot of wasted potential. Therefore, this level gets a 5.5 out of 10 from me, the extra 0.5 because it is a pretty decent looking level. Okay, there's a trigger warning in place for this one. The Apocalyptic Trilogy. Everyone's favourite, legendary, upcoming, impossible, godlike, hell-themed demon. It was in production for like 2 years and is supposed to be the hardest thing ever. It's so well built that it prompted the AP team to be formed and even prompted Riot to hand-pick them to design the legendary Sonic Wave Infinity. Yeah, okay. This was all well and good, and the level is by no means bad. However, I just really don't understand what the point of it is. Like, yeah, it's cool and all, and being 3 of the most famous demons merged together and redesigned with hundreds of thousands of objects, that's cool. But as a top 5 rated extreme demon, I struggle to understand the point this level would serve. We've had countless remakes of Cataclysm and Bloodbath, 2 of which have already been in the top 50. And with Bloodlust still as number 1, this level seems somewhat redundant to me, although that's a pretty unfair word to use given the effort that went into making it. I know the point was to merge all 3 levels, but nobody said that that was a good idea. It is on the side of being much too long for me. The decoration in places is really good, but functionally, this level really falls down for me, and I have serious doubts that it will actually be verified before GD dies. And even if it does, who's going to play it? It's another one of these levels that just appeals to sort of the top bracket. And in the old days, we used to have levels that appealed to the top bracket in terms of difficulty, but now this is just going to be a PC draining one. Only the best PCs can handle a level like this. Overall, it gets a 6 out of 10 from me, losing the 4 points just for all the damning features outside of its design. The Hell Factory is a level I've always quite liked, the only thing being it's only the version now really. The 1.9 version and the work in progress version Koreaquo was trying to verify in 2015 ran the risk of ending up churning out a crap level. But when Powerbomb took over, they stepped back and completely revamped the level, making it unique, great looking and historic. The only thing I don't like much about this level is the gameplay. The Hell Factory has some very weird gameplay for an extreme demon. It's difficult to explain how, but it's just things like the beginning parts, the slow duels, etc. It's no secret that ABP is the superior level, but I think, looking back, that this level has its own unique charm, and it still stands out to me. The gameplay drags its score down a bit, but this gets a very nice 6.5. The Hell Origin is probably the best Hell level in my opinion. All of Stormblight's rebirths take their own unique approach to redesigning the Hell series, and though the Hell Origin is in no way perfect, it approaches the series with a much more vibrant and colourful take. I'm not taking into consideration the 2 upcoming levels for this list, as we haven't seen the finished products, but as for the Hell World and Hell Dignity, they are both a bit too dark for my taste. The Hell Origin has some bright colours and tries a few new ideas. I also really like the ending section, where it looks more like heaven, so to perfectly summarise a good series with a sort of way out feeling to it. Generally, it paints a much better picture of escaping hell than the others do. It also isn't too hard either. It's at a pretty good difficulty for an extreme demon. I think overall it's ever so slightly rough around the edges, but that gives it a bit of character. Yatagarasu is a very well built level and it has significant history. It also has pretty fresh and interesting gameplay, emerging in a time when remakes seem to be the growing trend. The initial version in March 2016 evolved a long way too, with parts being rebuilt, removed and replaced. Overall, it is a menacing level and it's quite visually appealing, not to mention that, in this day and age at least, it makes for surprisingly efficient use of objects for how aesthetic it is next to the ones that have upwards of hundreds of thousands of objects. My only main problem with this level is that it suffers from mega collab overstaffing. Bloodbath had a huge team for its time, yet it managed to mix the parts together incredibly well. Yatagarasu on the other hand suffers from too many creators trying to express their own individual great parts, with little attention to how their level works as a whole. Funny Game's part is completely different to Evasium's part, and Michigan's part is completely different to CXS42's. The disparity in the level is quite obvious to me, which takes away from the overall experience. With Bloodbath, if someone who had never played GD before took a look at it, they could quite easily mistake it for a solo level built by one person. Yatagarasu on the other hand is quite clearly a group effort, and so it scores a 7 out of 10, which is a good score, but it just loses points for the way it hangs together. You'll probably be surprised to see Devil Vortex ranking so highly on this list, but I think the drama, accusations and the like have really blighted what is quite a nice neat level. I've heard this level described as a better, neater Erebus, and I agree. I think that the building style works really well for the colour red. The block design wouldn't work in any other colour, and some of the parts are pretty creative. I also like the divide between the red bits being quite fast and the black bits being very slow, not to mention the great art in the level. The skull at the boss fight does look a bit special, and probably doesn't need to be in the foreground, however it's still a fun touch. Of course, I'm avoiding the one thing people talk about the most, the awful gameplay. The gameplay is another one like Crimson Planet, that it was buffed so it could be purposefully difficult, and as a result I don't think much thought went into the enjoyability of the finished product. I think this would be much more of a fun level if it were actually an insane demon, but its inconsistent difficulty is something fairly interesting as we watch it moved higher and higher up the list. Devil Vortex is very short too, and overall feels like a nice compact package of an extreme demon, which is something we're seeing increasingly less in the age of 3 and 4 minute extreme demons. I'm giving this level a 7 out of 10 for the great job Russ Sam did, but it would be an 8 if the gameplay didn't suck any possible enjoyment that people could have had out of the level. It had to be in here somewhere, and I'm going to get accused of sucking Nobbleboy's dick or something for putting it so high, but I think people forget that Nobbleboy didn't actually build Bloodlust, so let's discount his verification saga for now. Bloodlust came about just after Sonic Wave Infinity, and really acted as the catalyst for the rebirth trend in 2.0. However, out of all the rebirths that were made in that update, Bloodlust is by far the best. It mixes up the gameplay, uses some better art, and the extension, despite being easier than the rest of the level, is quite interesting, and by itself is a better level than Aftermath. I think Bloodlust is on the side of being a little bit too OP. There are parts that I would say are unnecessary, but generally this just gives a very impressive level, and chiefly I think it goes right where its main competition of 2.0, Yatagarasu, fell down, in that it hangs together very well for a mega collab. Yatagarasu feels a bit disjointed as a level, but like Bloodbath, Bloodlust is just this full unit and beast of a level. It gets a solid 8 out of 10 from me. And at number 1, you can tell how incompetent I am as a person in this community when I don't even put a red level at the top of my own red level list, but I think it just falls into this category just about. Infernal Abyss is by far the best hell demon out there for a number of reasons. It takes the hell theme and makes it kind of orange, more to resemble fire, something I think is a good touch and overlooked. All the aforementioned levels that aren't that inspiring are so because they go straight for that vivid red and black look. Infernal Abyss tries something a bit different and is a lot more of a refined level too. Manix and Bionox did a fantastic job of this in my opinion. The art works really well and the designs are very modest yet effective. I think that's something that it has ahead of all the other levels on this list. A touch of class. All the others are out and out beast mode difficulty, eye assaulting bright red visuals, and all have quite repetitive or predictable songs. Infernal Abyss doesn't actually sound that sinister. The gameplay doesn't look nearly as difficult as it is, because it doesn't try to look flashy. I was very impressed with this level all round, and I'm glad it never got to be number 1 on the Demons list either. I think it worked better with more challenging stuff around it, because people didn't have this massive weight of expectation they have on levels like Yatagarasu and Bloodlust. Overall, it's a great level, and by far the best hell demon out there. So anyway, yeah, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this list, and I hope you found it insightful. I'd also like to hear your thoughts and opinions, so feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll have a read. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new around here, please don't forget to subscribe. The sub growth on the channel recently has been insane, and 100,000 subs isn't far away now, lads. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll see you all soon.